So as Phil mentioned, the presentation should be something that's just kind of breezy. It shouldn't be real regimented. You shouldn't have to read it. You should be very familiar with it, and you can just kind of talk through it, highlighting the concerns that they have, because you've already addressed their needs. You found out what is most important to them. So you're going to highlight that and spend the most time on that part of the presentation. The other thing about the presentation is you can customize it, right, in the Design Center. So if there's additional things that you want to add, just put it in there. You may want to print it out. It's designed to be 16 pages, so you could print them and use them that way. If you want to print it, or if you do it where they have a physical copy of it, which I prefer because you can leave it with them, but you may want to add some supplemental material. We're going to talk a little bit about what you might want to add. This slide here has the home buying process. It's a diagram that is impossibly small for you to see on this slide, but we are including it in the resource material for you to have. One thing I like it is it shows how complex a real estate transaction can be. So it's not like they see on TV. You don't look at 3 houses and then there's an offer and magically they own the home. As you know, there's a lot of steps in between those things that happen, and a lot of things that we do behind the scenes. So I really like this slide, or this handout that we'll give you, to just give them, to show them the process. Some other things you might want to add to your presentation is your resume. Especially if you're new in the business, talk about some of your experiences that relate to real estate. If you've been through our education series and Fresh Start, understand that you have far more training than 90% of the agents in the business, and I would talk about that. If you've taken a negotiation class, even as a CE, talk about your experience and your education with negotiations. And again, don't just mention it, but talk about the benefit to them, how this makes you better suited to represent them in a transaction. A page of testimonials never hurts. I would include those. If you have people who have written you notes, or maybe take a screenshot of your website page. Anytime you have a testimonial, those go a long way in a presentation. Show them your personalized Key World website where they can search for homes. One of the things you're going to want to do, and we'll talk about this a little more, but before you leave that appointment, you're going to want to set up a search criteria, and I would do it inside your Key World website. If you're not familiar with that, now would be the time to do so, and we will include a link in this section so you can review the process to setting up somebody in Key World. Don't be afraid to talk about the company. Again, especially if you're new, or maybe you're in a region where Key isn't that big. We are a larger company, and so go to Key World, explore KeyRealty.com. Go to the page that talks about some of the awards we've won and the size of Key. Again, the advantage to that is that we can maybe find homes that aren't on the market that everyone else is looking at. We have connections within the company, those kinds of things. Information about the lawsuit. I wouldn't present this unless you have somebody asking questions about it. But we do have a handout that you can give to them and go over, and that will be also included in the resource page. Again, use this very sparingly. Do not bring it up unless they do. There's a house buying guide in the Design Center. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I would become familiar with it. It is a great tool for first-time home buyers especially. So, or if somebody who hasn't purchased a home for a while, just a reminder of how things work and what the whole process looks like. So that's a full color presentation that you can use to supplement the buyer presentation. Before you leave, you need to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So you want to set some expectations. Make sure they know that you can show them any house, including for sale by owners. You may want to do that on the page where it talks about finding homes in the actual presentation. If you miss it, just make sure you cover it after the fact, that when they're looking at houses, they at no time need to call the listing agent or the seller directly. They can always go through you. That's part of your job, and it's what we do. Let them know what hours you work. It's not 24/7. Please don't say that. We're professionals. There's no professional on the planet that works 24/7, except a paramedic maybe, and we're not paramedics. So just make sure that you know, if your kid has soccer practice or something, you know, you tell them you're available between these times and exclude the times that you're not available. Please don't ever say, when do you want to look at houses? Tell them when you are available to show them houses and schedule the time around that. I understand that in this market there may be exceptions to that. You may be on call a little more than what you would prefer to be, but for the most part you need to establish those boundaries so you can have a life. How will you be searching for their home? When will you contact them? Make sure that you're explaining this part of the process so they're not sitting there wondering if they're ever going to hear from you again. Make sure that they know you'll be calling them at X time, anytime there's a new home on the market, or to stay in touch, or whatever. Just explain everything up front so they're not wondering. What about open houses? Explain how the process works. Maybe give them some business cards. Make sure that they understand that they need to tell somebody that they are being professionally represented before they start wandering through a home and somebody is actually working for the seller. In fact, you may want to accompany them. If they see an open house coming up, I would recommend going through that house with them. You don't want them talking to a listing agent, telling them all their deep secrets that you were going to use in negotiations. So make sure that however you decide to do that, make sure they understand up front. So those are a few expectations I would set. Just make sure they understand the process before you leave that appointment.